everyone, and welcome to my podcast. I am Ayla Al Saka, a journalism student at Nottingham College. This podcast is part of my What Do You Do project, where I explore what journalists actually do day to day, their roles, skills, and experiences that make up real journalism. Today, I am joined by Catherine Adams, a senior lecturer in media and journalist at Nottingham Trent University, and an experienced BBC journalist and international correspondent. We will be talking about what the job of a journalist really looks like behind the scenes and how the industry has changed over time. Thank you so much for joining me, Catherine.
You're welcome, Isla. Good to meet you.
So, Catherine, you have worked as a reporter, producer, and a correspondent. What does a typical day actually looks like for someone working in journalism?
Well, the first thing to say is there's no typical day. Sometimes reporters are working from the newsroom, sometimes they're going out for a bit, coming back, sometimes they are in the field. My favourite part of the journalism work that I did was always being in the field, in which case you would wake up and find out what news was going on and maybe have some meetings and do some calls to try and follow up some stories. And then you'd go out and do some interviews, and you're researching these topics all the time. And when you've done the interviews, depending on the medium you're writing for, you would edit those and produce those in sort of packages or news items, video or audio or online. And you would, perhaps be talking to your editors as well during the day, and you'd upload those things or send them over. And I think sometimes also you're going to go live into programs if you're a broadcast journalist. But if you're working in a newsroom, the day always starts with an editorial meeting every day. So everybody gets together to talk about what stories there are around, and then the editor will allocate stories to reporters who don't have a story. So that's very much a brief summary.
Mhm. Oh, that's really interesting. What skills do journalists rely on the most in their daily work, and which ones do you think the hardest to develop?
Well, there are, personal skills, and then there are, uh, you know, technical skills, and there are professional skills, and sort of innate skills, if you like, personal characteristics.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there are lots. The first thing you need, I think, when it comes to being trained, is you need to understand how news works, what news values mean, um, how the industry works. You need to know about law and government, and really all the nuts and bolts of gathering material. And then there are all the skills of editing, recording, interviewing,
Mhm.
reporting, and writing. And generally, you really need at least a year of practicing those things before you can be much use in a newsroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think digital media and technology have changed the way journalists work now compared to when you
Mm.
started?
Yes. Well, in the past, things moved at a slower pace, and they were not there wasn't round the clock feed of news. So although that there was for news agencies, to be honest, that was the only platform. And I'm talking about, when I say news agencies, I mean Reuters and Associated Press Association. News agencies like that, they would take stories all day long, all around the world. But you either worked for an agency, or you did radio, or you did TV, or you did print.
Mhm.
So now you need all those skills, because you're probably going to have to do a version for audio and for video, and also post on social media. So you need is what we call multi-skilling. You have to be good at everything, taking photos, filming, and so on. And it's really difficult to be a what we call a mobile journalist, where you're doing the camera work as well as being, the reporter, that kind of thing. In the past, there would be one person, somebody would be trained just to be a video editor, but there are not very many people in the news business, more in documentaries, but who have those very advanced skills. And then someone else might just do lighting, someone else might just do sound. So that's changed a lot.
Yeah, so now anyone can do everything at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Usually everyone's expected to do everything. So it's very different. And our courses at the university have changed as a result. So we just do a degree in journalism, not a degree in print journalism or radio journalism or TV journalism, which used to be the case.
You have also done research on the representation of women in the media. Let me say that's just so inspiring. From your perspective, what progress have you seen for women working in journalism?
Well, there definitely is a rise in numbers. So there are more women working in the industry, and women are more visible, and there are more women getting to those managerial decision-making editorial jobs. But it's still not by any means 50-50. And there is also a problem which has arisen at the same time, which is the abuse of and harassment of women journalists, especially if they cover subjects which incur the wrath of certain parts of the internet. For example, if they write about sport or gaming, that kind of thing, that are considered male territory. That's made life very hard for women journalists, and that wasn't there before. Everybody, not just women, have to deal with posts, comments on the, below their articles, and social media trolling and abuse. Not just women, but it is particularly difficult for women, and can be very, very personal and frightening. Yeah.
When you were working at the BBC and other outlets, what were your main responsibilities as a journalist? And what is your favorite?
What I liked to do was to find stories about things which otherwise wouldn't have been reported, because I feel that's the job of journalists. I liked to be free to cover a patch where no one else was, and find things out. George Orwell said, "Journalism is the thing that somebody doesn't want printed," whereas PR is the opposite. And I felt that it was sort of a duty and a passion, really, and a responsibility to find out what was going on. For example, when I was in the South Pacific, based in Fiji, I discovered a huge problem with domestic abuse, which you don't normally read about or think about in relation to paradise, something that looks tropical and beautiful. And so I enjoyed the investigative side of it, but I think a responsibility of the journalist is to make things visible, but also to bring some insight into the subject, and to ask challenging questions, to try to hold the powers that be to account, and try to find out what's really going on under the surface.
Finally, what advice would you give to young journalists, especially students like me, who are just like starting out and trying to understand what the job is really like?
Yeah, there's a few things you can do. The first one is to start writing, and there's lots of opportunities now to have your own blog on Medium or Substack, or to write about, journal, journal stuff about holidays or whatever, and to get that, publish it yourself, or try to get it published on something like, well, it could be the Tab, or one of these, student magazines that's online. There are lots of places where you can offer stories and pitch stories. So anything that you can publish is brilliant. If you're interested in radio, get involved in community radio, hospital radio, prison radio, anything like that. And if you're interested in video, then just, make videos and post them. Yeah, because lots of people are doing the same thing. But if yours are original and interesting, even if they're not technically perfect, they will, catch the eye of a future employer, and you can send links to your work that way. So try to build up a portfolio. That's the first thing. The second is to really annoy people by getting in touch and asking to have a look round, to have a work experience, to shadow, to get work experience, and or just do a little bit of extra freelance work, So anything you do, even in a voluntary capacity, is really, really good. Like, you might not be interested in men's football, but have you thought about just updating the Forest Ladies website with the scores and doing little match reports or whatever? So that's all good. I would recommend, if you're over 18, joining the National Union of Journalists student branch, which means you can come to local meetings in Nottingham, meet other journalists, and that's a good way to try and network and talk to people about perhaps shadowing them and following them around and what they do. And that looks great on a CV as well. So you have to knock on a lot of doors. It's not easy getting in. But having said that, I know that a lot of news editors complain that students don't do that enough. They rely too much on emailing and doing things online. But if you do try to make the effort, send in, I don't know, voice tape or whatever, one day someone will be off sick. They'll be desperate for somebody to do the sports scores or the weather, and they'll remember that you had a nice voice, and they might call you up.
Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of today's podcast. A huge thank you, Catherine, for sharing such an honest and beautiful insights about what journalism is really like behind the scenes. I have learned so much about the reality of this profession, from the skills and responsibilities it takes to the ways it keeps evolving. Thank you for your listening. I am Ayla Saka, and this has been my podcast for What Do You Do?